everyone, and welcome to another episode of Almost Daily LCK Show, the show that airs almost daily and is about LCK. So, as you can see, there is a small change. I didn't wear any esports merch related to some particular team, like for example T1, but today I have a T-Bears hat, so I will get my head all sweaty just for the sake of content. So as usual, or maybe as in the previous episode, I have some notes and I will be talking about two banger series that happened yesterday or 2 days ago, depending on the fact when the episode will actually air. So basically we had Liiv Sandbox versus KT, and we had Freddy Brion versus Hanwha Live. And we will start with the more hyped series. So we will start with KT versus Liiv Sandbox. So a little bit of background before we go through the games. But both of the teams are a huge contestants for the third spot, as it was previously when Liiv Sandbox was playing versus Damwon Kia. And also those teams are quite similar when it comes to the strong side. So basically both of the teams are playing through aiming and Prince, so through their AD carries. So they are actually very bot lane reliant. Also Liiv Sandbox, this is more of a trivia than a real threat, but I feel like I should tell you guys about it. Liiv Sandbox is the only team that can potentially steal the second place after the regular season from T1. The only team. So it's exciting, and Liiv Sandbox should actually attempt to do everything in their power to win that series. One more trivia. Prince and aiming have an insane amount of player of the game, so POG points, because Prince before that series had 1000 points and aiming had 900. So that's it. We have game 1, and the interesting part about the draft in game 1 was Lee Sin for Rascal on top lane. So 1 year ago we had a meta when Viego, Lee Sin and Gwen were basically picked or banned, and the reason for that was obviously despite the items and the item changes that allowed those champions to be visible on the Rift, they could be actually flexed to 2 or 3 roles. So you could have played Lee Sin mid, Lee Sin top, Lee Sin jungle, as well as Viego mid, Viego top, Viego jungle. So that's why they were in meta. And when that happened, Rascal was spamming Lee Sin, and he played 17 games so far and won 11 of those 17. So it's quite a good win ratio, I would say. So basically the game started with a nice exciting skirmish on mid at minute like 5:30, but no one died. However, you could have seen how little is Closer on Assassins, because Closer is a very promising mid laner, and I think I am starting to join the hype train for Closer, because he's playing so extremely well, but I think his weakest point are control mages. So I feel like I will be talking a bit about Lava later in the episode, and Lava was very, very good on Victor. However, Closer is not like a Victor enthusiast. He's much more better when it comes to Akali or Sylas that he actually picked up in that game. So I was actually excited to see how he performs, and he performed pretty well. I think it's a spoiler already, but he did. Closer has his cup of tea champion, and speaking about the cup of tea, Rascal after that insane skirmish, got all of a sudden solo bolo on Duff. So yeah, Rascal on his, you may say, signature pick, on the comfort pick, the pick that he feels so powerful on, and yeah, he's getting a solo kill. So it's a very, very good start for KT. And on top of that, they also had Zeri Lulu matchup versus Severe Renata matchup, so they can actually pressure the opponents, they can actually push, they can actually deny them some creeps. So KT around minute 6 was already winning both on top and on bot lane, so the game was not looking pretty promising for Liiv Sandbox. However, there is one important thing. Liiv Sandbox has Croco. And Croco is a guy who is always super aggressive, and I don't think he has a glimpse of hesitation in his head. When he sees an opportunity to engage, he will always do that. The problem is that sometimes he doesn't have that opportunity, but he will still engage no matter what. However, in this game, it was actually very important for Liiv Sandbox because of the Croco, because of his aggression, because of his map awareness, they grabbed a pick on Lulu and the gold landed in Prince's hands. And this is super important because Prince has Seviers, or a very good scaling pick, and Prince is the biggest carry potential of the entire Liiv Sandbox roster. So this was very crucial for Liiv Sandbox. By the way, guys, I don't know if you remember, because I talked about it 1 minute ago, but remember when Rascal got solo bolo on Gnar? Yeah, he did that twice. So he will, after 6 minutes, he will grab another solo bolo on Duff. So simple as that. Now KT has a very fed Lee Sin, and actually fed Lee Sin is really tanky. Like, Rascal went for Gordrinker as well as Sterax as well as Tabais, right? So his main goal is to jump into the backline of the Liiv Sandbox and basically be a nuisance, or maybe obviously make a play and, you know, insect kick someone towards his team. But the main goal is to basically be a nuisance, jump into the backline of the opposing team and maybe kill the AD carry, or at least grab so much attention of that AD carry so the rest of my team can actually kill the entire Liiv Sandbox roster. So far, up to minute 15, as I mentioned before, it was a huge stomp. The game was looking very bad for Liiv Sandbox. They lost on bot, they lost on top, and basically, so what do you want to do? How do you want to play it? And looking at the compositions, actually KT was not scaling bad. They had Zeri, and you know, I'm a huge anti-fan of Zeri. I think that champion is just bonkers, and your team may be losing, and all of a sudden Zeri does Zeri things, Zeri incident happens, and you can just bounce back into the game just like that, all of a sudden. So I hated it. But you know what, guys? There are two things for Liiv Sandbox that are still on the plate. There is Closer on the Assassin pick, and he grabbed solo bolo on Ahri. Yeah, he died doing so because he grabbed solo bolo and he landed between tier 1 and tier 2 turret on mid. And yeah, KT just chased him down and killed him. However, he bought enough time for his teammates to actually grab a second Drake, and also on top of that, he grabbed himself some gold. So it was very huge. So we have Closer with a kill and Prince with a kill. So the two main carries of Liiv Sandbox roster. So despite the fact that they were getting stomped, there were some, you know, glimpses of hope, some potential points of the game that maybe could bring them back. And yeah, the third fight happened. Like, Liiv Sandbox is a team that I wouldn't say that their strongest point is the early game, but what they are doing pretty well is team fighting. The cohesion that they have when they are fighting together is really, really abnormal. And the Fairdrake happened, and the Fairdrake fight happened, and it was a messy fight, and ultimately Liiv Sandbox secured the Drake. And that was funny because we had Silas on the backline of KT's team, and we had Rascal, we had Lee Sin on the backline of Liiv Sandbox team. And actually, Liiv Sandbox just won it. They were very strong. However, Lee Sin almost killed everyone, and Prince needed to flash through the wall, and it was madness, but Liiv Sandbox won it. They played the team fight very well. The Renata's ultimate was very nice placed, and it was hard for KT to play. And I think that particular fight just broke the game wide open. And just like that, the entire goal lead that KT built up to that point was gone. There was no goal lead. The gold was dead even. So the game is basically, it's like, in football, it's 0-0. That was the moment, despite the fact that it was already a mid-game of a game. And you know what, guys? 1 minute later, there was another fight. And just like that, Liiv Sandbox found the pick, Croco found the pick on his Skarner. He was very, very good at that Skarner. Actually, I think Croco is very good when it comes to very tanky champions, like Poppy or Skarner, but I think he's not that good when it comes to, for example, Viego, right? Or even Wukong. Like, Wukong is much more squishy, and sometimes Croco can be over-aggressive. But when he can be over-aggressive, because he's a huge tank like Skarner or Poppy, he's performing very well. So he found another pick, they were fighting, and actually the Prince's timing of Spell Shield when Rascal tried to insect him towards KT Rolster's team was magnificent. It was perfect. It was a perfection. So it was looking really good, and Liiv Sandbox actually after that got a third Drake when KT attempted to threaten the Baron. But they just couldn't do that because Liiv Sandbox had double TP, and they were actually ready to potentially rotate to that Baron. So they just grabbed the third Drake uncontested, and they were close to the soul point. So yeah, the game was looking very, very well for Liiv Sandbox after that moment. I feel like after that, KT was kind of forced to do something, and they tried to kill Closer on top lane, and they did it in a very unusual way, I would say, because it was Zeri ganking through the wall and tried to kill him with Vikla on Ahri, but they just couldn't. He was too tanky, and he had his team around actually. So Liiv Sandbox were like, okay, we love it. Fights, team fights. We will obviously take that challenge. And they just engaged and wiped the floor with KT. Then just grabbed the Baron, and yeah, it was a snowball. They sieged. And also one more important thing. Like, some of the teams in LCK are too slow, I think. I really think that they are not attempting to accelerate the game, even though they have a lead. So usually what we see is that a team grabbed Baron, a team has 3 Drakes, let's say, and they are waiting for the 4th Drake and maybe the 2nd Baron to actually finish the game. But Liiv Sandbox, what I think was very, very important here and very good to see was that they didn't wait for the 4th Drake and another Baron. They were just trying to be proactive. They tried to be aggressive, and they were looking for pick. And actually, once again, Croco find that pick on Skarner, and they just went through bot lane and finished the game. So that was it. But let's not forget that the early game from Liiv Sandbox was bad. It was simply bad. They were getting stomped. But once again, they won the game because they are so good at team fighting, and that was the main reason for their victory. However, yeah, we have game 2, and in game 2, we have a different situation because once again, we have Rascal in a favorable matchup. He has Akali into Gwen, and also we have bot lane of KT, which is Kalista Amumu. And as I mentioned in the previous episodes, Kalista Amumu is that bot lane who wants to fight early, right? And Liiv Sandbox picked Aphelios and Renata. And technically it's good because if you have Kalista Amumu, it indicates that you want to go in, like team composition wise. So Renata is very, very good into such compositions. However, yeah, let's not forget that Aphelios is a scaling pick. He needs a lot of time, a lot of resources to actually beat that, 200 years monster. So the problem with that was that Liiv Sandbox, they don't have that, inhibition in their brains. They are just going for every single fight and they will just contest everything. So what they did was to contest the first Drake. And obviously, take into the consideration that KT has Viego, KT has Sylas, and Kalista Amumu bot lane, they just couldn't win it. And yeah, it was 3-1 in KT's favor, and that game was looking pretty bad, because after that, KT just grabbed the Herald. Also, on second Drake, like, it was a different, because KT won the first Drake fight and they grabbed Herald. So I think Liiv Sandbox felt a bit pressured that, okay, we fell behind, so maybe let's try to fight on the second Drake, but not directly on the second Drake, because we know that we are weaker than them. So let's do it that way. Let them get that second Drake, and when they will be splitting up to actually go to their lanes or to the jungle, let's just try to find a pick. And they actually tried to do that on aiming, but he just flashed away, and it was good. Like, they burned the flash, and I feel like they could have just run to their jungle and it would be fine. They wouldn't get punished for that. However, what happened was KT saw that the Liiv Sandbox team is collapsing to aiming. They put the Herald on mid, and obviously they utilized that window to make a proactive play and to grab themselves some gold. And Liiv Sandbox went through the river, so the most greedy puffing that could have ever happened, and they were completely cut from closer on Taliyah. Taliyah didn't have her ultimate, so I don't know how they wanted to win that fight. And after that, they just lost the fight. Rascal grabbed solo bolo, and KT was just snowballing after that point. Like, they killed Duff once again on top lane. This time it was not a solo bolo. It was close to a solo bolo, but it was not a solo bolo. And yeah, they killed him once again. They grabbed the second Herald. They popped mid with second Herald. And Liiv Sandbox, ladies and gentlemen, they finally realized that contesting those Drakes when they have scaling picks and they don't have their power spikes is pointless. So what they did? They didn't contest the third Drake, but why in the world you contested the previous two Drakes? It doesn't make any sense at all. But, well, they are learning, so yeah, they didn't take that. KT got uncontested third Drake, and yeah, it will be like, we already knew watching that game that there will be a soul fight, right? So it was, and Kroko did something very questionable, I would say. So we saw that Vikla was pushing bot lane, and we also saw that KT's team is grouping on the river, right? So Kroko, for some reason, instead of being patient and also wait for Duff's flank, because Duff was flanking, he stepped into the river when they have such an instant engage. I mean, KT, right? They have Amumu, they have Kalista who can throw Amumu, they have Sylas who was actually flanking, right? Like, he went so deep to that river that he got instantly popped. And basically that was it. There was no way for Liiv Sandbox to win that fight. There was no way for Aphelios to be that 200 years monster. And after that fight, the gap, the gold gap, the items gap was so huge that basically Vikla and Rascal could have just like solo balled every single member of Liiv Sandbox team. However, as I mentioned before, some of the teams, and Katie did that themselves, are waiting for, I have no idea what, for what moment they are waiting. So they didn't accelerate the game despite having, you know, huge amount of gold and baron, and they waited for the elder buff to finish the game. Like, I mean, I get it a bit, like, don't get me wrong, Katie's composition was terrible when it came to Siege. Like, you have all the melee champions and Kalista, who is not a melee champion. I mean, not a melee champion, but doesn't have a huge range, right? So yeah, it was problematic, but with the Elder Dragon, obviously they can just force the fight even under 2 Nexus turrets, and they basically won. So it was 1-1, and keep in mind, Katie stomped Liiv Sandbox in the game 1, in the early game, and they stomped throughout the entirety of the game in game 2. So Liiv Sandbox looked actually like an underdog in that series. Like, I feel like Katie was such a good team. And also in the game 3, Liiv got his Amumu, and I think he was so huge on that Amumu. Like, really, that pick was working for him that day. Like, he was insane. He was finding those small openings, those engages. It was really good. And you know what, guys? I mentioned that Liiv Sandbox were the underdogs here. And the worst thing happened for them. Kroko went under 2 turrets for Vikla to maybe kill him or at least stop his recall. And he just died. He gave him the first blood, and you may say, like, you may defend him. Like, I think that the decision itself was very good. You wanted to cancel Vikla's recall because he was actually losing the wave. The wave from Closer's side was crashing under the Katie's turret, right? So it was a very good decision. But he went a bit over aggressive, as Liiv Sandbox usually do, and he died. So it was like a terrible opening of that game, the game that was a decider of the series, right? So yeah, the next part of that game was both teams being very proactive when it came to Herald. Like, Katie was trying to gank mid, while Liiv Sandbox, before the Herald, like, it was around 7:30 as I recall correctly, they were trying to shut down the bot lane, but ultimately there was a trade. Liiv Sandbox took the Herald, and Katie took the Drake, the first Drake of the game. And also, after taking the Herald, Liiv Sandbox utilized that on the bot lane because, as I mentioned before, Prince is the main carry, so they want to funnel as much gold as possible. And I feel like they did that pretty well, right? Like, free plays for Prince. It's actually yummy. So that was it. But apart from that fact, like, it was not a very flashy game when it came to kills. However, there was a 3-man gank on the bot lane, and Closer almost outplayed it. Like, when Liiv threw his bandage into the Azir, into Closer, he immediately pushed him with Shurima's Shuffle into the turret and almost outplayed it because he flashed through the second bandage, but he couldn't quite get it. It was so close, like, life was so low, and you know, for me, that play, even though Closer didn't succeed ultimately, is showing that he's such a dangerous player. He's really a playmaking dangerous player, and I feel like if he just, you know, gets some more experience and maybe be better with those control mages, he can be a star of that roster, or maybe the entire LCK, right? And also, The next thing that I want to highlight from the game is that Liiv Sandbox is over aggressive, as I mentioned before, but in this game it was visible so clearly. Like, they knew, they had all of the information that KT has a perfect position and they are contesting the second Herald right now. And Liiv Sandbox decided to just face check, and obviously it couldn't go well for them, so they died, and they lost 2 players because of that completely unnecessary move. And remember that they were scaling pretty well, like overall. I mean, KT's scaling is also good, right? Because you have Sivir, you have Gwen, you have Talia, right? But still, you have Zeri on Prince, who can just do Zeri things, and you have Closer. So you have your 2 best players, arguably, on the champions that can basically, you may say, solo carry the late game. So why would you do that? Why would you do some reckless plays instead of just turtling the game? They are just contesting everything. Why? Well, then we had the minute 18 fight that was 30 seconds long, and well, Croco and Prince and Kyle played that so well. Like, Kyle played that so well because he was so good at protecting Prince, right? This is the typical Lulu's or any enchanter's job, like protecting the carry. And they did that so long. They were able to prolong the fight for such an extended period of time, and also grab a kill without losing any team member. And on top of that, KT lost a lot of resources on bot lane because Duff wasn't even in the fight, right? So it was 4v5 in favor of KT, and they didn't manage to get a kill. On top of that, they lost the player, and they also lost resources on bot lane. So that was actually pretty nice, and that was a small bounce back for Liiv Sandbox. But still, the game and the gold and the objectives were in favor of KT. But right after that play, KT, without a good preparation, without tempo, tried to force third Drake for some reason, and they cannot get it. They just couldn't. And like, you have a well-scaling team comp as well. Why would you do that? Like, this is the problem. I feel like sometimes the teams are not understanding the meaning of their compositions, as I mentioned in the previous episodes. Like, sometimes they are over forcing things in the moments that don't require that overforce. Yeah, we waited then 5 minutes for Liiv Sandbox to start the Baron and attempting to finish it, I guess, because they were bringing that HP bar of Baron pretty low. But then Liiv landed a bandage and then flashed and landed 4-man Amumu ult. It was so huge for KT, and wow, that was pretty good. And I felt like after that play, it was over. Like, as I told you before, Liiv on Amumu is insane, and he landed a very crucial ult, and then they just wiped the floor with the Liiv Sandbox team, and KT obviously on top of that grabbed the Baron, so they could start the Baron power play, and they could have just started their push. Yeah, but then there was another fight after Liiv Sandbox was preparing the power play. KT was preparing the Baron power play, and Liiv Sandbox engaged into them, and that was pretty close, I would say, but they still lost. And you can ask yourself a question: why? Like, once again, they are always forcing. Like, just wait for another objective. Maybe you can make a pick, or maybe there will be a moment that, I don't know, Baron will just beat up the enemy team, right? And the enemies will have their H bars lower, so you can engage. But no, this is just a typical situation when KT has a Baron buff and they can just siege tier 2 turrets, usually you need to give them away to the team because they have Baron power play, they have Baron buff. It's so hard to contest. But Liiv Sandbox didn't think about that. They were like, okay, let's just try to fight for basically nothing. I mean, for something, right? Let's give them that. They wanted to stop the snowball. They wanted to stop the Baron power play. But I feel like that was not the correct moment. And they lost the fight. It was close. They lost the fight. And basically after that moment, I thought that the game is surely over. KT had Sivir on 4 items, Talia on 4 items with the Magi's. So, whoa. That was tough. However, all of a sudden, Liiv Sandbox contested the 5th Drake and they took it. And they had 3 Drakes all of a sudden, so they have a soul point, right? However, they sacrificed 2 people for that and KT just took the Baron and ended them. That's it. No, obviously not. They didn't end it with the 2nd Baron, and this is... That should have happened, right? 2 Barons and, you know, like, you have 4 items Sivir, 4 items Talia. What could have gone wrong here? But the game was too long as usual, and there was a 6th Drake, and Croco won the 50-50 smite, and we had another almost 1 minute fight when Liiv Sandbox was running towards bot lane. They were running away and Azir created his tower so they can actually, you know, be very close to each other and to the tower and force KT to fight. And the problem is, and as I mentioned before, Sandbox is very good when it comes to fighting, and they were so close to each other, so coherent, while KT split up completely. And they were on top of that running to the jungle. And you know, jungle has a lot of walls, and Zeri likes a lot of walls. So Zeri did Zeri things, and they turned that fight around, that prolonged crazy fight around. Liiv Sandbox won it. Prince was like almost 1 HP and he still survived through the fight. And with that one fight, with that one push, they just ended the game, just like it. We have so many crazy endings recently in the LCK. First, there was that Damwon versus Genji game, right? When Damwon had that 1 HP caster minion and they managed to win. They managed to close that game. And now, all of a sudden, we have this ending, right? Like, Liiv Sandbox was getting so stomped. And I want to highlight one thing. In the post-match interview, Prince even trash-talked the opponents and the experts because he said that, yeah, everyone bet that KT is going to win the series. So, well, they didn't. You should, guys, read the meta once again. Could you imagine saying him such a giga chat sentence when they got stomped in the early game in game 1, they got completely stomped in game 2, and they got completely stomped in game 3, but they still miraculously made it happen and they won the game. I love that team. Guys, I'm a big fan. For the playoffs, I can promise you that I will buy a merch of Liiv Sandbox, that for sure. I don't know. If they will have my size of a t-shirt, then it will be a t-shirt, the match jersey. If not, I will even buy a freaking notebook just to have something that can indicate that I'm a big Liiv Sandbox fan. They are amazing and I love them and I want them to go to Worlds and I will be the biggest fan. I don't know. I will just sign a Prince nickname on my tits. I don't know, whatever. And actually my cat, my Yumi, jumped into the screen, so say hello to my Yumi. And guys, this is the perfect moment to actually end the video and the episode. So thank you guys so much for your watching time. and I hope that you grabbed yourself a tea or coffee beforehand, because the episode was quite long. And leave the subscription, leave the like, the comment, whatever, any feedback, any comment, any interaction is obviously nice. So thank you guys, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.